You know that sci-fi dream, right? Where you just tell your phone, hey, plan a weekend beach trip for me and my friends, and it just does it. Books the flights, finds the perfect Airbnb, even has snacks delivered the moment you arrive. That's the incredible promise of AI agents, and it's fueling this massive wave of excitement and investment. But how close are we, really? Let's dive in and separate the hype from what's actually happening on the ground.
And yeah, this really nails the vision. We're not just talking about an AI that can answer your questions anymore. We're talking about an AI that can take action. An agent that can literally go online and do your grocery shopping, navigate those clunky travel websites, and maybe even do chunks of your job for you. It's a super alluring future. But what happens when you actually put these agents to the test today?
Well, here's the reality check, and it's a big one. For any task that involves more than a couple of steps, the typical success rate is only about 30%. Think about that. For every 10 times you ask an AI agent to do something complex, it's probably going to fail 7 of those times. That is a huge gap between the promise and the actual performance. So, what on earth is going on? Let's look under the hood. To really get why these agents are struggling, you first have to realize that AI agent is a super broad term right now. People are using it to describe everything from a simple script to these incredibly complex models. So to get a clear picture, we've got to break it down into 3 distinct categories, and each one has its own big trade-offs. Okay, think of it like this. On one end of the spectrum, you have a master chef. They can cook literally any dish you can dream up, but sometimes they burn the toast. That's your computer controlling agent. Maximum flexibility, but that reliability can be shaky. On the complete opposite end, you have a vending machine. It can only give you what it's stocked with, but it does it perfectly every single time. That's your workflow automation. And then right in the middle, you have enterprise assistants, which are trying to find that sweet spot between the two. This table really puts some hard numbers on that trade-off. Just look at the agents from Claude and OpenAI. They're the master chefs, right? Incredible flexibility. But look at their scores on the OS World benchmark, which tests their ability to do real computer tasks. They're only succeeding between 15 and 38% of the time. Now, compare that to Google's Mariner. It's more focused on just web tasks, and boom, it scores way higher on a web-specific test. And then you have your vending machine, Zapier, with super high reliability precisely because it's not trying to be a chef. This data just screams that we are still in the very, very early days of this tech. So, what's holding these super intelligent models back from being reliable? Well, it's not just one thing. It's a whole collection of issues. We're talking about 5 fundamental technical hurdles that are proving to be incredibly difficult to solve. And these aren't just simple bugs you can patch. They're really deep issues with how these models are built. This slide really lays out the gauntlet these agents have to run. First, you've got hallucination. And for agents, this is terrifying because they don't just say wrong things, they do wrong things, like trying to click on a button that doesn't even exist. Then there's the context window problem. Think of it like a really bad short-term memory. The AI can literally forget the goal of the task by the time it gets to the end. On top of that, they're not great at long-term planning, and they get tripped up by confusing error messages. But the real killer, the one that just torpedoes so many tasks, is the math of compounding errors. Let's just break this down for a second, because it's wild. Imagine an AI that's 95% successful on any single action. That sounds amazing, right? An A+? But what happens when you ask it to do a simple 10-step task? The odds of it getting every single one of those 10 steps right plummets to less than 60%. And most useful tasks in the real world are way, way more than 10 steps. This is the brutal math that's at the heart of why even the smartest AIs can fail so spectacularly. But, the technical challenges are really only half of the story. There's another huge reason we're not seeing fully autonomous AI agents taking over. We are deliberately building in safeguards. For all sorts of safety, security, and legal reasons, there are rules being put in place to make sure a human is always, always in the loop. And we're not just talking about friendly suggestions here. OpenAI, for instance, specifically blocks its agents from using email. Why? To stop them from sending spam or phishing scams. GitHub Copilot requires a human to actually approve any code its AI writes to prevent some catastrophic bug from getting into a system. And then you have actual laws, like the EU's AI Act, that mandate human oversight. Because at the end of the day, someone has to be legally responsible when things go wrong, and that someone is always going to be a person, not the machine. And this isn't just some hypothetical problem. Just look at the story of Klarna. They made huge headlines when they announced their AI chatbot was doing the work of 700 human agents. Seemed like this massive win for automation. But then, the other shoe dropped. Turns out, for complex problems like fraud or payment disputes, the AI was completely lost. Customer satisfaction tanked, and Klarna had to start hiring humans again to clean up the mess. It's just a really powerful, real-world reminder that we are not ready for full automation. So, what happens when all of this marketing hype crashes headfirst into market reality? Well, the results can be pretty dramatic for both the products and the companies that build them. Oof, you really can't get much more direct or devastating than this. The Humane AI Pin was sold to us as this revolutionary AI agent that would replace our smartphones. But in reality, it was unreliable, it was slow, it overheated. This single quote from one of the most trusted reviewers in tech, Marques Brownlee, just perfectly captured the massive public disappointment. And that disappointment had absolutely devastating financial consequences. Humane was reportedly hoping to be acquired for up to $1 billion. After that disastrous launch and those terrible reviews, the company was sold for a tiny, tiny fraction of that. It's just a brutal lesson in the real world's cost of overpromising and under-delivering. And it's not just the flashy hardware startups that are getting burned. This exact same story is playing out inside big corporations. A recent report from MIT found that a shocking 95% of enterprise AI projects are failing to meet their goals. Companies are rushing to adopt this technology, but they're quickly finding out that it is just not ready for prime time. So, after all that, where does that leave us? Well, AI agency is definitely real. But right now, it's kind of like a toddler that's just learned to walk. It's exciting to watch, for sure, but it's also clumsy, fragile, and it falls down a lot. It can do some pretty amazing things, but only in a very controlled, predictable environment. It's just not ready for the chaos of the real world. Not yet. And that, of course, brings us to the billion-dollar question. We know that the raw capabilities of these agents are improving at a blistering pace. Some estimate they're doubling every 7 months. Right now, that progress still feels slow, and the failures are really obvious. But the question is, are we just witnessing slow, incremental steps, or are we actually standing at the quiet, flat beginning of a massive exponential curve, just a few doublings away from these agents finally living up to all that hype? That's the question everyone in tech is asking themselves right now.